main audience hall, has finished the kickoff to this conference. Yes, yes. Just a quick point of information. We're waiting for a gong any second now, which should indicate that all the sessions, all the parallel sessions are starting. So please bear with us. Wait for these couple of minutes, and then we're going to get going. And we're going to cross every border very fast. Don't worry. On its way towards the horizon, so we are heading towards a really wonderful, very exciting discussion round. You see not just a full podium, but also a podium filled with ministers of transport, and we're very, very excited that all of you have made your way here. My name's Connie Schumacher. I'm going to be your host for the next hour and a half, which is why I'm sitting down now. My introductory remark is going to be just a very simple one. When I was a kid, my father pulled my leg because I said, I want to see a border. And he said, oh, a border is a place where the world has been nailed closed with big boards and nails, thick nails. Of course, being a child, you believe what your father says. And then we got to the border with France. We walked across it, and there was nothing. No border to be seen, not even an indication, except this little post saying, you are now entering France. Now, there is something that is a figment of an imagination, and then there is reality. However, sometimes realities these days are probably more like the way my father has described borders to me. We're talking about borders now and how to overcome them in the true sense of the word. And I know that each and every one of you has different perspectives on border crossings, of what it costs, of how to overcome it culturally, politically, of how one has to talk to each and everybody that is a neighbor, north and south, how sometimes the talking to the neighbor doesn't work properly, how sometimes talking to the neighbor works, especially if you sort of do cross-border exchanges, even if both sides speak English. And we have a number of people who monitor the whole system or who give guidelines, and these are sitting on the right-hand side. Let me introduce the people singularly when they come to talk. And of course, we have put the Minister of Transport of Switzerland into the middle because, as everybody can see, she's a lady, and therefore she's going to do the kickoff of this session. Doris Leuthard is the Federal Minister of Environment, Transport, Energy and Communications. And I think this foursome is quite important to your job. Now, I've already sort of indicated that Switzerland being landlocked and having sort of the big challenge of having neighbors in the north who want to travel south and neighbors in the south who want to travel north, that puts a lot of economic strain on you, especially given the geography of Switzerland. Would you share some of these challenges that Switzerland has to manage and does manage? Yes, please.
So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, also warmly welcome from my side to the audience here. Like Connie said, Switzerland has quite a particular geographical situation, and a part of that, we're not a member of the European Union. It's also on the political level a special role we have. For many years, we have been a transit country, because when historically trade began, it was mainly north-south trade in Europe, so they had to cross Switzerland. As a strong economy, we have been always exporters, so therefore also our industry needed connectivity. And I think when we talk about connectivity and borders, probably it's on different levels we have to think how we can overcome connectivity. Because it's clear when you are connected, it's good for your economy, it's good for free movement of people, goods, and therefore you need also to overcome an isolation, because an isolated situation that you are not connected or the connections cost you a lot, this would also have a negative impact on your economy. So people today, they want that goods are transported as rapidly as possible. They want to have unhindered border fences, and they want to have low costs. For a country like Switzerland, this means firstly investment in your own infrastructure. We are, for the moment, constructing the longest railway tunnel of the world, the Gotthard Tunnel. This is connecting Europe. And this was also planned together with our neighbors, because this corridor north-south from Rotterdam to Genoa only makes sense when also our neighbors invest in the same corridor and invest also timely when these alpine tunnels of Switzerland are opened. So today, I must say, Netherlands, Belgium, they are in time. Germany is a little bit in delay. Italy a little bit. But we still hope that the contracts we have with them can be more or less fulfilled. Then we would have a corridor north-south, a connectivity which is important, especially for the transportation of goods, but also for the transportation of people. So therefore, my first point would be, we need not a national planning of your infrastructure, but we need a thinking in corridors, a thinking in an international way, which are the main corridors, may it be road or railway, that you can plan, invest, realize together and timely. My second point would be that coming more to the borders, here you need also facilitation of trade. Switzerland concluded an agreement with the EU on customs facilities and security. That's a good solution. And this helps us that we can notificate earlier than when the goods are on the border, so we can quite easily inform the customs authorities, the neighbors, what happens, and not only when the heavy vehicle is at the border. So here I think countries must work together on harmonized and e-customs services, that this pre-announcement, this pre-notification helps you to lose time. In Europe, and I think this is still quite a big barrier, on the railway system, most countries give priority to the transport of people. So when you have trains with goods arriving, normally at the borders they wait and for many hours. Therefore, I think that's not very attractive. This costs a lot of money, and when it is important that you have the transportation of goods on the railway system and not on the roads, so we must facilitate also these time procedures and give at least an equal treatment of the railway system in the transportation of goods. I think security is also an element I would like to mention. After September 11, we had worldwide a level of security measures which increased, understandable, but I think there was also an overreaction. So when I talk to entrepreneurs, to specialists in logistics, that's something which comes quite fast, that we've overdone a little bit, and especially for international exports, when you have to move goods from a port to a railway system or to the road, or you have a mixed system, this is also very cost intensive. You lose time again, and I think also here harmonization would be good, but we should not overdo all these measures for the movement of freight. Otherwise, it blocks transport flows, and whenever you block transport flows, well, this costs money and you lose time. So for us, the 3 E's are very important. This means interoperability, this means intermodality, and intelligent transport systems. Interoperability means, in a European concern, that we have the same technical standards on our railways, that this is harmonized and that traffic can flow unhindered across borders. Intermodality, I think, is a must, because the capacities on roads and railways have to increase. So we must use different means of transport and to take the comparative economic and ecological advantage of each system. In Switzerland, we are convinced there are up to 4 or 5 hours of transportation. Railway has a comparative advantage to the road and to air transportation. And then with longer distances, it changes. Combined transport, therefore, is the most efficient transport technique in this respect. So also this is an efficient system which reduces costs and which can avoid borders. And perhaps to say one word to this intelligent transport systems, to ITS, this is, as I already mentioned, the electronic data transmission for customs authorities. This is very important, and my wish would be that this could be realized on an international level. I was once Minister of Trade also, and on WTO in the current Doha round we had trade facilitation. And here also these harmonized systems for custom duties and so on was one element, but so far it could not be realized because every state has its own procedure, his own authorities, his own standards. They don't, also in Switzerland with our customs authorities, that's crazy. They prefer the paper, and to change the system in electronic way, this takes time and money and is normally quite difficult also on a political side. So this would be my statement as an introduction. I think here we can improve, it's possible, but you need political will, cooperation and money.
Thank you very much for that fabulous kickoff, and I've seen some of the gentlemen nod at different places, and I'm quite sure that they will refer to your content. The next person I would like to take the floor is the Honorable Denis Lebel. As you can hear, he will be speaking English, but I hope. Yeah. Sorry, that was just sort of, have we understood each other? Yes, we have. That's actually quite good if it's not electronically transmitted. Of course, he is the Minister of Transport for Canada, which is why I had to ask the question in the first place. And of course, you know our European conception, it's North America. So actually, do they have a problem at all? I mean, the US and Canada, okay, fine, two different countries, a massively long border, but, they speak the same language. Well, do they?
Yeah, most part of.
Okay, and the last bit of the introduction is actually, I have a smile on my face because the minister has introduced himself to me and to the round as a businessman and accountant in the shape of a minister. So we're very, very curious what you're going to share with us.
Thank you very much, and that's my real own approach. And I only had to the specific at the beginning that I'm two Minister of Infrastructure, Collectivities, and I'm still Minister of Economic Development for Canada's Agency for Quebec regions. What you said for me, that's all involved, and I know how. Transport, infrastructure, and economic development goes all together. That's very important. I will stick on my text because I like to speak. I will say, I would read these lines for you, and for sure I'm very proud to be here with you with this distinguished guest. Je vous parlerai tout à l'heure en français, mais je vous le dirai à l'avance. No, I will tell you before I will speak French. It's a pleasure for me to be here today at 2012 International Transport Forum Summit and join this panel discussion on a theme that is critical importance for every member country, indeed, the every trading nation. Transportation drives our economies, creates jobs, and can improve our quality of life. It's integral to international trade and economic growth, which are the core of trading nations' prosperity. We all have a stake of ensuring that our transportation networks are connected, efficient, and seamless. But how do we ensure that our transportation systems are efficient, reliable, and able to support our trade objectives? And what is the role of government in this endeavor? I truly think that our role is to support private companies. Government can do everything, but we have to put in place the infrastructure they need to have good businesses. In the Canadian context, we ask ourselves this question in relation to our largest trading partner, which also happens to be our closest neighbor, for sure, the United States of America, and I salute them if some of their citizens are here. That's sure, that's thousands of kilometers, that's one border. We have only one, but that's thousands of kilometers. Every single day, goods valued at over $1.5 billion cross our border at relatively few major crossing points. In fact, more trade flows between Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and Detroit, Michigan, USA, than through any other border crossing in the world. And quite frankly, this relationship is as essential to the US as it is to Canada. 7 million US jobs depend on trade with Canada. The ability to move goods and people seamlessly across our shared border is integral to our prosperity. The economic stakes, then, of ensuring connectivity across our borders are enormous. In the days immediately following the date you speak about, the terrorist attack, September 11, 2001, our interconnected trade and transportation network were really challenged. There was thickening at the border, and the implications were severe. Cargo trucks were backed up for dozens of kilometers for days at our major border crossing. Congestion and delays pose serious threats to our economy. Security concerns on either side of the border resulted in a tightening of controls, while at the same time trade volumes continue to grow. Comme je viens du Québec, je dirai quelques mots en français si vous voulez placer, if you want to place your plugs, I will speak French for a part of this speech. Des industries entières. franchir la frontière.
Many things depend on international trade, and if you want to join them, this raises an issue. I'm talking, for example, about cars being imported from the United States to Canada. And this is very important because this is a kind of trade that needs to be developed quickly. Canada and the United States need to work together on keeping our borders open, even though in the future there may be further terrorist attacks. This is important for our politics. Security and accessible borders are essential for our country and our trade. Trade in 2011 was important of high volume. Mr. Harper and Mr. Obama were presidents, met and cooperated on economic collaboration, and here they came across a very interesting problem. Cooperation needs to be strengthened in our situation. In December, it was said there were 2 action plans in Canada and the United States directed at fostering economic relations and promoting security. And it was also about facilitating legal regulations in the future. And we will now continue in English.
Early. Second, facilitating trade, economic growth, and jobs. Third, building on successful cross-border law enforcement programs. And fourth, enhancing cross-border critical and cyber infrastructure. It's a practical, forward-looking plan that builds in our successes and harnesses work already underway. Addressing threats as early as possible at the perimeter of Canada and the US makes sense from both a security and economic perspective. If Canada and the US can identify as-risk trade and travelers before they arrive at our borders, better protection can be provided to our citizens. While legitimate flows of trade and travelers across our shared border can be streamlined. Under the action plan, Canada and the US agreed to make significant upgrades to physical infrastructure and technology at key border crossings. And we acknowledge the needs for better cooperation and coordination if progress is to be made. In the area of transportation, joint efforts are underway in areas including maritime supply chains, mutual recognition of air cargo, integrated cargo security, border infrastructure investments, and pre-clearance at pre-inspection. All of these efforts constitute a practical roadmap, and they represent an historic step forward joint Canada and US efforts to promote greater security and prosperity. As a complement of this initiative, the action plan on regulatory cooperation will help reduce barriers to trade, lower costs for customers and business, and create economic opportunities on both sides of the border. It identifies a number of initiatives where Canada and the US will align our regulatory approaches in the areas including agriculture and food, transportation and the environment, while not compromising health, safety, and environmental protection standards. In a globalized economy where goods and people are moving from greater frequency across our borders, cooperation, coordination, and mutual efforts are key to confronting challenges and eliminating both bottlenecks for economy. Targeted investment and strategic deployment of technology are needed to support these efforts. As Canada's Premier Minister said when he announced the action plan, these are agreements to create a new modern border for a new century. Our approach to our shared border addresses our concerns with respect to security and protection of our citizens while supporting our interests in keeping our border as open as possible in order to facilitate legitimate trade and traffic. Common ground, shared interest in protection, jobs, and facilitating trade, and concrete action, these are the elements which we continue to build upon where I implement our leaders' vision and we strive for connectivity across Canadian-US border. I thank you for the invitation to me here today to share this approach, and for sure I will have to speak some more words after, but I know time is money, and we have to invest this money for our population. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for sharing your views with us at the moment. And as I said, some of the gentlemen had been nodding when Mrs. Lloyd had been talking, amongst them Mr. Kitchev, when, especially when you said that standing at the border costs a lot of money and is unproductive. Now, Bulgaria has a number of neighbors, has one big trading partner, and some problems. We'd like to hear Kamen Kitchev from you as the Deputy Minister of Transport and Information Technology of Bulgaria. Where are your headaches, where are your tummy aches, and is there any kind of medicine that you see around the corner? It ought to be working. Our sound engineer will probably switch it on now.
Now? Okay.
Yes.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear ministers, dear colleagues, I have a note that I could read, which was prepared by my experts, but I will not read that because most of what's written is already said. I will only try to say a few things, and I will try to talk about problems and how we can solve those problems. A wise man many years before me said that man is alive only when on the road, and we should try to keep that, and we should try to give the man or the person the right to do that. And as ministers of transport, this is our main goal, is to achieve free movement of people, goods, and to allow people from one part of the world to have the goods from the other part of the world. Now to the reality, and to the reality of a country which does have some good examples, and unfortunately we have some borders and some crossings where we have to really improve what happens. Further to the technology, to the pre-announcement, to the IT which can be used, to the infrastructure, this is clear. With money, all those things will be built, and they're being built as we speak. We are building roads, we are building railways, we are building border crossing points where there is more technology involved. But there is an example which I would say that I've seen with my own eyes, and I grew up with that, and this is the borders and the way they changed ever since we joined the European Union. Borders, for example, the border with Greece, which in the past was easy 2-3 hours for me to pass. Now you can only go for like 5 minutes, and you don't even count that. And this is probably the way, and that also goes for Romania, same story there. This is probably the way where we should all look to try to implement the rules and the regulation that we managed to get within EU, and to put those rules in place in most of the critical border points. Unfortunately, this is not possible, and we can only try to improve that. I'll add some things which I believe that are very important. And important to what's been said so far, I don't want to repeat. We have to talk between different administrations, but in many occasions there is 3 or 4 administrations which are responsible for a border crossing, and in many occasions those administrations among one country are fighting against each other, and one is trying to justify itself as its importance. And in many occasions, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, that's the problem. In many occasions, we bring only few of the agencies which are responsible for the border crossings, and we should have everybody on the table. And I know that sometimes some of the people say, no, this is my issue, nobody's touching it, don't ask me. That's an ego which each country and each administration has to undertake, and has to go over it and to solve this problem. There is the issue of the organization. There is the non-governmental organization, there's the association, there's the international association, there are the country associations of different mode of transport that we have to ask for opinion, and we have to ask them for advice how to solve the problem. Those guys know, because they're every day there, and they know how this is done on different border crossing points, and if it's done somewhere, it should definitely be allowed to be done on other places. Another issue which I have to bring, and this I think will bring some questions later on, and this is what we have here, a discussion, and there should be a discussion, is the issue of different mode of transport. In many occasions, one mode of transport competes the other mode of transport. And in many occasions, for example, the truck drivers will do everything in their power through their association not to allow the railway, for example, to grow. That's the reality, gentlemen, and whatever we say, that is facts, and this does happen. And those are the things where we as government and we as ministers have to step up and try to prioritize those things. We cannot have the stories where the roads are full with traffic. We have to implement we have to implement restrictions for traffic of trucks. But on the other hand, the railway infrastructure is empty. I mean, we all want to be like Switzerland, but unfortunately, it's probably one of the best examples. And that's where I was really nodding when you say that railway has the biggest priority in your country. For us, this is difficult. And I do try, but that takes a lot of time and a lot of money. There is also for example, the inland waterways. I mean, the river. We have to take the advantage of that. And I have to tell you that I was not 2 weeks ago in Vienna, and we were discussing the possibility of Dunav River. And again, mainly the operators of barges are saying, gentlemen, I'm pressed to buy trucks because the only way I can be competitive is I also have trucks. Because there is a regulation, there is this, that, and the other, which does not put me in competitiveness with all other modes of transport. Those are the issues and those are the regulations where we as government and as minister have to look, and we have to have our heads in each of the occasions. In many occasions we are responsible for all the transports and we try to maybe manage some kind of balance, but I have to say that in some of the times we do fail, unfortunately. But maybe we can exchange some ideas today and we can discuss those issues. But this is not written in my notes, but those are the things that I believe should be discussed and that are the reality of the problems in Eastern European country like Bulgaria, with 5 European corridors crossing over, with one of the main gates between Asia and Europe, and this is the border crossing with Turkey, where I have to say that the colleagues from Turkey did fantastic infrastructure. We are the one right now building a new infrastructure on our side. Not too long ago, we opened a new rail and a road infrastructure there. But still, there is some issue on the border crossing which we have to all undertake. And this is customs, this is administration, transport administration, this is financial administration, this is Ministry of Agriculture. And all these points, if you put all these people together, only then something can be achieved, because only one ministry cannot really solve the issues of border crossing. And those are the choke points which do stop the goods. Yeah, these are the more things which I would like to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, especially also for mentioning waterways, which up to now had not been mentioned in the context of this conference. Of course, I'm not aware of what's been happening in the main audience hall just now. So maybe that's something that we should consider. And thank you also for sharing the challenges that you experience with a high-tech border that sometimes doesn't work at other aspects. I'm now looking at a man who is living as a businessman, transport every day, and through all his companies. Pere Padrosa is president of the group Padrosa, and you yourself are located in Barcelona, but your companies have interests all around Europe and also in South America. The interesting thing is that you have 2 hats, and I would like to address the second hat as well, because it's relevant here as well. You're the president of the International Road Transport Union's Goods Transport Council, and which means that you're very much in freight. We're not afraid of freight, but you're going to put forward your points now.
Thank you. It's running?
It takes 1 second.
Okay. Thank you very much, Connie. And first of all, I would like to say, for me, it's an honor to be between the ministers and this audience, relevant audience, their colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'm not a schizophrenic. Today I have two caps, but I'm, of course, a haulier and also vice president of the AERU. First of all, I would like to say we are on the 21st century, and we have not to cross borders with paperwork. We need to always implement IT solutions and, of course, e-solutions, because the e-commerce is running already yet for 1 decade. In today's globalized economy, professional road transport is no longer merely a mode of transport, but a vital production tool interconnecting every business to all world markets through its unique, high-quality door-to-door service. However, there are quite often barriers that hinder effective road transport and thus growth. Of course, for me as a haulier, I would like to say sometimes I think I'm a haulier on road transport, but because it's the faster mode of transport, the most economic mode of transport as well, and the easier one for our clients. But in the case of some colleagues before said, in the case if the railways are coming up in the same way, maybe I would like to buy, why not a locomotive or a railway, or maybe commercial to railway plants. The infrastructure is there. We need to be, we are a businessman, then in this point of view, we need to do business on the private sector, of course. And we need also the public sector on that way. Allow me to give you an example of those burdens to road transport. The International Road Transport Unions, AERU, the example is the new Eurasian Land Transport Initiative, that means NELTI, monitored commercial deliveries of goods by road on various itineraries along the Silk Road. The results show a competitive potential for the development of trade along the Silk Road. But highlight that over 40,000 of road transport time is lost at borders due to inappropriate procedures. 40% of time. In other words, the problem for achieve seamless transport in the road transport sector is not the lack of infrastructure, but rather inappropriate border procedures. This is our main claim to the governments and of course the ministries to be here today, but otherwise others all over the world. More some 38 of cost of transport for illicit payments due to the environment conducive to corruption created by long border waiting times. As longer as the waiting times in the border, more unsafety reasons that means for the drivers and even for goods. The answer is very easy. To procedural problems along the Silk Road, but not limited to that geographical area. Streamlining customs procedures through ratifying and effectively implementing the key UN multilateral trade and road transport facilitation instruments, in particular the harmonization and TIR conventions. In addition, I think the International Transport Forum needs to make a step forward to overcome the goodwill declarations scenario and fix concrete targets in the reduction of the waiting times at borders. I think this is a very good scenario to mean that. Only in this way, the improvement in the border crossing facilities will have the political priority it deserves. The facilitation provided by UN global conventions is complemented by public-private partnership initiatives, such as the AERU Border Waiting Times Observatory. A web-based application enables customs authorities to report on waiting times at their borders, and IT TIR risk management tools such as TIR electronic plea declarations and real-time safety, developed in full partnerships with national customs authorities. Then what the ministers can do in this case? The recent analysis and recommendation by the transport ministers from the ECMT countries were precise and to the point. On some of the recommendations we have seen progress, and on other issues more progress is needed. Indeed, in the true spirit of public-private partnership, effective IT tools such as the AIRU, TDPD and TIR distance learning programs have been developed. However, more progress is needed on the effective implementation of the existing tried and tested multilateral tools. In order to address the procedural problems at borders and to streamline customs procedures, more ITF countries, such as the People's Republic of China, should, as a top priority, ratify and effectively implement the KUN multilateral trade and road transport facilitation and security instruments, in particular, harmonization the TIR conventions. What are the key in this case? As a regular international trade may sometimes be used by criminals as a cover for illicit activities. Security is a priority for both public authorities and road transport companies. However, non-harmonized and complex national procedures at borders, along with the excessive bureaucracy, not to mention corruption, often make border crossing difficult and extremely time-consuming for truck drivers and international road transport operators, with waiting times measurable in days and in some places over a week. Therefore, I'm finished reducing red tape by harmonizing and mutually recognizing the data and documentation requested by each customs authority on road is key to simplify border crossings. The only way to ensure such harmonization and mutual recognition is to fully implement the UN multilateral tools, as I said before. I think this is the great and the much as I would to say before. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. You're going to have a second go later on if we all have the chance. Thank you very much for shortening that, because we would like to get into discussion. We still have 3 interventions that are coming, and you have mentioned security, you have mentioned safety, and of course you have mentioned customs, and these 3 words are already pointing to our next speaker, and Mr. Guozhangzhu. I'm sorry, my Chinese should be better, so I'm saying I'm sorry. He is actually the boss of all customs officials. Well, if he was, then probably we had a harmonized world. At the moment, we don't yet, but we have this very strong organization, the World Customs Organization, ruling from Brussels and setting rules and regulations. Where, Mr. Zhu, do you actually have tummy ache when you hear all the interventions? Where is it that you still have a lot of concerns? Can you exercise your job as well as you want to?
Okay. So, ministers, dear moderator, ladies and gentlemen, friends, good afternoon. So, first of all, I would like to on behalf of the World Customs Organization, thank the event organizer for inviting me to this international transport forum, and speak on the important topic, facilitating global trade and connectivity across borders. So I heard a lot of comments on the customs work. So I'm the Director of Compliance of Facilitation of the World Customs. So due to the time constraint, I would give you a very brief impression of what is customs going to do, is doing, and have done. So it could be a coincidence that the theme of the World Customs Organization this year is also connectivity. So borders divide, customs connects. So this is the slogan. This is the slogan of the World Customs Organization, the Year of Connectivity. So as we celebrate our 60th anniversary in 2012, so this acknowledges the heritage that our founders of the Customs Cooperation Council, it's a legal name. So WCO is working name. So bestowed on us, this is the heritage. So namely, the importance of cooperation, particularly the value of interconnectedness among customs and its partners. So for the international customs community, connectivity connotes a vision of arrangements worldwide that support the smooth and lawful flow of goods, services, people, technologies, capitals, culture, and ideas. So the WCO's instrument, tools, and activities provide a concrete basis for ensuring connectivity between the WCO members, both at the national and the international levels. And in this respect, we talk about the 3 pillars of connectivity. So the first pillar is people connectivity. So when we talk about this, it is based on the customs to business partnership. So such as we have some activities, such as programs, such as authorized economic operator, which is very familiar to many enterprises. So this program, we just had a conference in Seoul, how to say, beyond our expectation. The participants, we have more than 800 participants, which is beyond our expectation. And they harmonized the system nomenclature and revised the Kyoto Convention. So all these serve as a common language for customs and traders. So underpinning all of these interactions is the promotion of integrity and service culture through our ARUSA program. So second connectivity is institutional connectivity. So customs to customs connectivity, including arrangements for mutual assistance in exchanging information and intelligence. The application of consistent risk management to the secure and facilitate trade. Mutual recognition of AEOs and coordinated border management. We call it CBM at an international level. So just many people mentioned a lot of mess at the borders, many agencies there. So we are promoting this coordinated border management. So customs to other government agency connectivity, including single window environment at a national level and a one-stop physical controls. So the third one is the information connectivity. We are now initiated a program which is called Globally Networked Customs. This creates utility plugs, which are components of data to be exchanged within predefined areas, such as well as supporting protocols, standards, and guidelines for the exchange of data. At our council session next month, we will be considering a feasibility study to take this important work forward. Electronic single window environment, which encourages the submission of quality information in a timely manner for the faster clearance of goods to facilitate trade and applying the WCO data model as its common language is also one of our priorities. So in the outline for this session this afternoon gives some positive examples of how some customs agencies have managed to apply measures which secure the borders while being able to provide a facilitation for legitimate trade. Also mentioned the measures that are based on the instruments I have just touched upon. The outline also pinpoints challenges that remain in some other areas of the world and gives a clue to the WCO's greatest challenges. We are developing and refining the necessary instruments, but we have 177 members. So 2/3 of these members are developing economy. the, the need for and the challenges of modernization, adoption, and implementing of our instruments should not be underestimated. We have a dedicated capacity building directorate which in a structured and a sustained manner strives to meet these needs. So we are here talking about trade facilitation, but how the facilitation can be achieved. So here I would like to say, so maximum global trade facilitation can only be achieved through a secure, efficient, and secure, efficient, and a resilient supply chain. So together we can make it happen. So I look forward to developing these themes in the ensuing panel debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I would like to come on, and maybe we can have an applause for all the speakers up to now to sort of have a seizure, because now we're going to have the eagle's view. When I talk about eagles, we have the eagles sitting left and right, and I'd like to address first Mr. Kopp as the eagle from Washington, World Bank. He's a specialist in transport. He's just laughing about the eagle, but you know, there's some people who look actually at facts and figures and the money concerned. And we've had a number of examples, not to mention Mr. Kitchev, who says, you know, we're losing so much money if the border, even if it's high-tech, doesn't work. I know that you've brought along some facts that you would like to share with us. Please get started.
Thank you very much. What we are concerned about as the World Bank is not to see trade facilitation as a technical matter, but to see behind it the enormous cost it causes if there is no connectivity, if there is a lack of connectivity. And I have brought 3 maps to show how severe this problem is for the developing countries. This is a map that shows graphically how thick the borders are in parts of the world, that it is not like it was for Connie crossing the border between Germany and France, but that there are really thick borders, that there are not waiting times in hours or minutes, but in many days. And you see that there is a concentration of these problems in 3 areas: in Africa, in South Asia, and in Central Asia. The borders have remained particularly thick. And this has consequences. This has an immediate consequence for the intensity with which these countries can trade. And this is a graphic that shows you the consequence for the intensity of trade between these countries. And the red arrows show the intensity of the trade between the countries. And you can see that with the thickness of the borders, there is a clear correlation with the thinness of the trade streams. So there is a close correlation for those countries that have the thick borders, that they have very low trade volumes. And this has dramatic consequences for the development of these countries. As the next map shows, this map tries to translate the economic geography of the world into a map. It is not the geographic map of the world, but the economic map of the world. And we see that these regions that had the thick borders almost disappear from the world map. Africa has become a very small area. Even Latin America is small. And the United States of America, Japan, and Europe are far larger areas than they were in geographic space. And this shows how important it is to achieve trade facilitation for these areas where it is not like crossing the border between Germany and France. And without intentions to bore you, there are some aggregate numbers that have been found out by the World Bank of what it means to reduce the trade barriers. if we reduce the transport costs, the trade costs by 10% between countries, we get an increase of trade volumes of 20%, and this means a development impact impulse for these countries of 2.5% of their GDPs. And this is really very important numbers for these countries. High transport costs reduce the competitiveness of the country. Trade costs reduce the competitiveness of these countries, not only in that there is no access to export markets, but that imports that they depend on are very expensive and that the costs therefore are higher than otherwise. Excuse me. The monetary cost is not the only problem, but there is also the problem of these long time delays at the borders, and on average, 1 day delay in transit reduces trade by more than 1%. And some of the Central Asian countries have waiting times of more than 50%. A 10 days delay reduces the income of those countries by 1.52 percentage points on average. So this shows how important the topic is we are discussing and why we insist that we have to discuss it beyond a technical discussion on reducing border crossing costs. Thank you.
Fascinating, very insightful, and yet somehow these figures should convince everybody, and I've seen nods all around, except we still have this problem. We have the problem that borders aren't seamless, that borders are there, and that there are restrictions. And I've promised you the second eagle's view. Mr. Thapa has been working in many Asian countries, based in Delhi with his institute, Asian Institute of Transport and Development. Now, Mr. Chairman, with that length and depth of analysis, why do those arguments that we've heard from everybody, like the need for talking with each other, the actual achievement of some good agreements, the fact that every country is losing so much money, why hasn't border crossing improved?
I think all these gentlemen were talking about the lady included, talking about the big ticket trade. There's one aspect of trade facilitation which is often and grossly neglected. And I wish to situate this in the context of South Asia. 6 decades ago, the Indian subcontinent was partitioned. Overnight, neighbors of centuries became foreigners, and normal exchange became international trade. Creation of extensive borders extending about 7,000 to 8,000 kilometers disrupted what was hitherto a single geographic and economic entity with trade and accompanying transit facilities that went back 2 millennia. This had colossal impact on the lives of ordinary people. The worst affected were those living in border areas. It is commonly observed that economic prosperity is generally lower in border areas, and South Asia is no exception. As a result, corruption and crime thrive in border areas because the state forbids people from doing what they have been doing for about 2,000 years, namely, trade with each other. Such trade is now euphemistically called informal trade. As it happens, its volume far exceeds that of the formal trade. I wish to point out that poverty in border areas has inherent security risks, the very risks which we are trying to address over here. Besides, there is a strong gravitational pull of proximity, common geography, and cultural affinity. Furthermore, and perhaps unavoidably, these borders are unnatural and porous. The formal border crossings therefore serve only a limited purpose. The purpose of the trade, I believe, in the new millennium should therefore go beyond the traditional mechanisms of tariff and quotas. It must include off-border issues as well. This would help to support a well-functioning trading economy that benefits everyone. It is in this context that initiatives on trade facilitation across borders have to be viewed. While it is very well for countries to devote a great deal of resources for the development of infrastructure to support formal big-ticket trade, it is also necessary to devote attention to the livelihood issues of the people who live in the border regions and trade with each other for meeting their daily needs. The issue of trade facilitation should therefore be viewed from this bottom-up approach. This requires political will to bring about the change. Democratic polities and people's aspirations for a better life will be the driving force for this change to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was slightly different than what we discussed last night, but I thought that was giving a different note and a new facet to our conversation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've been looking at my little watch, and we're running a bit late. So what I would like to do now is already start to open the discussion whilst I put my first question to the panel, so that we can actually finish at 6:15, because I know everybody wants to go out and have a really great time tonight at the invitation, and some of the gentlemen have to have a just-in-time departure, just as much as we've had a just-in-time delivery to this panel. Can I just ask the two of you, what can you tell Mr. Kitchev from your negotiations with northern and southern neighbors, and your negotiations with the US? How can one sort of draw in a neighbor that is only half willing in what makes sense, i.e. sort of reducing border problems? Mrs. Leuthard, maybe you'd give a kickoff? Because, I mean, what you're doing is actually getting people together that cannot be forced. They have to do it on their own free will.
Well, I agree with the minister, with my colleague, that begin in your own country. Well, the different administrations put them together, and that's an ongoing discussion we are still in, but this is helpful. And first, I think you need the economy in your back. So the organizations are for the traders, the private sector. Well, I think our Spanish colleague has also this sense that when you can show the economic interest by facilitation trade, that it's also a big argument for the neighbor to step in and to look how we can reduce all these cost elements. And I think here it's always the best element to convince politicians and the authorities when the potential economic enterprises support you. And I think this would be my advice to give to him, but I think he knows that and does it probably.
The smile says it all. Still,
that's so different. That's so different. But my examples coming frequently from the world of sport, but because sport built my life. If I played badminton national level in Canada, if I was playing badminton with somebody and never win a game, I will stop to play. That we need win-win deals. And we need to negotiate in good faith. I'm sure that's any partners are trying to do. But so different I can comment about. But I can say that we are working for another free trade agreement with the EU, Canada for the moment, when we expect to. But I'm sure the future will help us. Our young population is changing mind. For them, borders are so different. And we have to continue to support them and to respect each other. But we have for sure to respect our own countries in negotiation. I hope then the future will be easier for everybody. But things are changing so fastly, then I'm sure our young people will get closer of the deals then.
Thank you very much, Andreas. And then the gentleman who's got the microphone, and you will get it next, yes.
I would like to add to this discussion that the World Bank is trying to do joint programs with different countries to overcome the following problem. If you do something to facilitate trade, some of the benefits of what you do goes to foreigners. These foreigners are not people that support you politically and cannot support you politically. So what is important is to develop a sense of reciprocity between the countries that are involved. That if you act unilaterally to facilitate trade, that this meets with a response from your partners. And to develop a history that gives the confidence that this happens is so important and so difficult.
Thank you so much. Would you like to comment at this point, or no? Okay. In this case, I would like to listen to your question. Then there's a gentleman over there, and I've seen a hand risen over there. Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Martin Matthews. I'm Secretary of Transport in New Zealand, as you may pick from the accent. I just wanted to offer more a perspective that I haven't heard in the discussion so far, and it's about connectivity across borders. It's about the shared space, in a sense, we have between our borders and above our borders. And if I can use my own country as an example, we're an island nation. I think of all OECD nations, we're the furthest from our trading markets. 99% of our exports by weight leave by sea, and tourism is our second biggest export earner. So international aviation and international maritime are really important to our economy. If we're talking about facilitating trade and connectivity across borders, the way we think about the international regulatory regime for maritime and aviation is just as critical to a country like New Zealand as it is to think about road and rail connections between countries. And I just wanted to put that into the mix, because I think if we think about the growth in trade over the coming decades, and indeed the growth in travel by people in the coming decades, how we think about the regulatory regime for maritime and aviation is going to be critical to how we facilitate global trade and have connectivity across our borders.
Thank you so much for your comment. This gentleman already has a microphone, and could you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name is Marco Sorgetti, and I'm the Director General of IATA. We are the International Freight Forwarders and Logistics Service Providers Federation. We cater for 150 countries over the world, employing about 10 million people. We had our own workshop this morning about making our documents digital. Of course, this goes in the right direction. I wanted to tell you how this discussion looks from our own perspective. I mean, our companies are large multinationals, like you've seen some of the sponsors here, like DHL and Kuehne Nagels and others, and I see some very close friends here as well. We had some good times in Brussels together. And medium companies and small companies. And if you look at the cross-border issue, you have a completely different perspective, whether you are a large multinational, a medium company, or a small company, a small business. A small business looks at borders as being there, and their duty is to facilitate crossing their own border, the one that they see in front of their eyes. So in their way, they try to facilitate in the best possible manner. But if you look at cross-border from the point of view of multinational, you have a totally different perspective. Those lines that we have seen before are very meaningful. A large multinational, for instance, would be more enticed to settle or to open up business in an area where they can make real business, where the facilitation is there, is effectively in place, etc. So the perspective is completely different. And in my view, and this is where I connect with what you have been saying before, perhaps to represent this reality to your politicians, to the people that are there on the ground in your countries, can explain to them that if they wish to open the window to these possibilities for larger trade, bigger trade, they have to look at borders as something that they have to sort of demolish in a way. This is the way that the big business will come in, because big business comes in naturally if it finds the possibility to come in. But it would not come in through the back door. it does come in only through the main door. So there is an interest for politicians in those countries that are more affected by those thick lines that you have shown to open up, to capture the possibility to deal with the big business and not being contented only with dealing with, the little border, the little garden they have in front of them, which is, of course, a way of maintaining some trade going, because trade is there all the time, but it would be limited.
Any particular question to one of our panelists?
Well, no. Congratulations for the statements. It was very instructive. It was just to give you the perspective from
Thank you
a
very
certain
much
point
for
of view.
sharing. And we appreciate very much that there is a difference whether you're small, medium-sized, or a large company. There is the person in the last row, and then, yes, sir, I have seen you. In between, I would like to put a question, but you put your question first, and then it's me again.
Right. Good afternoon. My name is Guillaume Dressy. I work for IATA, the International Air Transport Association. We are partners of our friends of FIATA and very much working together to try and improve the efficiency of supply chains worldwide. And I'm responsible for e-business initiatives within IATA, and in particular on the cargo side. And I've got a question on this, but just before I ask the question, I wanted to say IATA represents airlines, and we may not think of airlines as crossing borders, but in effect we do at the airport of departure or the airport of arrival. And also airlines transport a lot of the world trade in value, about 35% in value of the world trade of goods, international world trade of goods, is transported on airlines, including and very much passenger airlines. And we have been asked by our member airlines for a number of years to lead activities to transform the supply chains that they are part of into electronic supply chains. And when we started, we thought that the challenge was a standards challenge or a technologies challenge. And as a matter of fact, we've reached a conclusion where we think it's a regulatory and a very much governmental challenge. And as a matter of fact, we've reached a conclusion where the limit of what we're able to do and achieve in improving the efficiency of our air cargo supply chains in particular is very much the limit of what governments allow us to do today. And we work with the WCO, and we are very much supportive and thankful of the efforts of the WCO in particular to promote the implementation of electronic customs worldwide. But I have to say that we still find that there is very much at the moment today a limit to what that implementation of electronic customs worldwide is at. And my question really to you all is, what can you do and what can we do to speed up that implementation of international standards for electronic border crossing, including customs, and for not having to be presenting paper documentation, in particular in support for those crossings. Not from a technology standpoint, because technology will be there, but from a regulatory standpoint, what can we do to speed it up?
Thank you very much for that question. And sir, if you were with us for one moment, the next person who's got a question, I would actually like some of you to answer that. You've been mentioning ITS as one of the 3I solutions. Of course, a lot of the traffic, I mean, you must be extremely interested in, just the stamp of approval. But the big question is the regulation. Maybe Mr. Zhu would like to comment on that first. Has the WCO already sort of done something that we can just take and sort of put across all the borders?
Okay. So we have a very good cooperation with IATA. We have both organizations signed an MOU. And I agree. He said, how can both sides together to promote the standards e-business? So from a customs point of view, I think, just as I said here, because customs is the enforcement agency of a country. So its primary duty is to enforce. So, but to the other side, the customs duty is to provide as much facilitation as possible for the national economy development and the national fairware. of course, on the enforcement side, we have to implement efficient, efficient and effective control of the illegal things, and while facilitating the legitimate goods. So what I think is, what we are doing now, we have developed a database, data model. For example, data model which can be not only used by the customs but also by the traders. And it can be repeatedly used. So now we have developed, it was firstly developed by the G8, but now in 1998, then passed to the customs. Now we have developed a 3.1 version. Once this is used, the facilitation can be greatly promoted. For example, 50% of time, we did some survey, 50% of time for proceeding the trade is spent on the fulfilling the procedures. So a data model is one of the very good measure to promote that. Another one is we have RKC, that is the simplification, harmonization of procedures. These procedures, if properly, implemented or complied by the traders, also will greatly promote the facilitation. Just as I said, the compliance is also very important because the customs is enforce the law and the regulations. If the traders, they comply, then they will enjoy the facilitation. So 5% compliance will be 5% facilitation. 100% compliance will be 100% facilitation. This is the second. The third one is the very good exchange of information between the organizations and between the national customs administrations. And not only information, but also intelligence. So just as many people mentioned, a lot of security measures, now we try to reduce the so-called security measures. Instead of conducting 100% scanning, we try to implement risk management, risk management to reduce the delay of the goods, of the trade at the borders as much as possible. So I hope partly answered your question. If not yet, we can discuss afterwards.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think the two of you can continue. Pere was first, and then it's your turn. Pere wanted to dive in straight afterwards.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for the question as well. And maybe if I repeat something, as you said before, Mr. Zhu, accept my apologies. But I need to tell you that, first of all, I think we need to express three main things about this. The first is the freedom of transit. This is applied, only need applied, because it's under the GATT, under Article 5. It is very easy. We have to. Then that's very easy. The second thing is the promotion and facilitation for international trade by the governments, because that means reaches between both sides on the neighbors. And the third thing, I think, is to stop on the economic globalization, the protectionism inside the countries, because that means no trade on the global economy. If we say that three things, I think the answer is very easy. We have all issues and we have all rules that we need. The convention are there, the rules are there. We need only to implement, and the key word is harmonization. Implement harmonization. Thank you.
Thank you very much. KL.
I think the larger issue is that we are adding layers after layers of regulation. You had the customs, you added to that environment, phytosanitary, health, and you have now added security. The world is witnessing a huge change this way, that multi-layers which are developing, how to harmonize or reduce. The fact of life is that immediately it's just not possible to make the world, the perception, threat perceptions are different. And if the threat perceptions are different, what we are trying to address is that I am, instead of 100 containers, I'm only doing 1 container and things like that. Now, these are all technocratic solutions which we are finding. Second, let's say between Bulgaria and Russia, there is only one border crossing. You need more border crossings. And that's the point which I was making, that you not only need more border crossings for the formal trade, you need more crossings for the people to interact with each other, which they have been doing it for centuries together. Now that aspect of trade we have not addressed. So one is that you must have more crossings which are formal. The other is that please make the borders irrelevant for the people. And that is the larger issue to be addressed. And the other one which you have just mentioned is reduce the layers which are there. These layers have been brought out in the context of the threat perceptions which the people are feeling. The last one, these trade changes, these lines which we were seeing, which has been put up so beautifully by Andreas, history has changed those lines. In the 17th century, China and India contributed 50% of the GDP of the world. 150 years later, they were a set of colonies. The epicenter of trade is now shifting from the west to the east. If this shift is taking place, and therefore more regional networks will have to be developed, and that is in the context of the fuel or the energy problem that we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the intervention. I haven't forgotten you, and you're going to get the microphone soon. Carmen, anything that you would comment on at this particular point? Is it sort of regulations? Is it a setup that you would need to work more efficiently, or would you say it's a set of changing minds?
Yes, I have to agree with the last set, and this is the layers that sometimes in trying to improve things, we're only adding layers, and if we got the layer of now the emissions, the latest, the newest one layer that is coming along, which also will not help. And those are issues which we have to address and we have to take under consideration. You asked a question right from the beginning, what's the difference between north and east and north and south? And north and south, in the north it's more stubborn, and in the south it's more flexible. But in many occasions that only leads to disasters and to nothing happens at the end of the day. That's one comment that I have to say there. And on the comment of the big channels of volumes, how it goes around the world and how this happens. In many occasions, we as politicians, we have to be really free of, this is what was said by the World Bank, that we cannot have the economy rule our decisions, because in many occasions, if it's economically correct for someone, it's not economically correct for another one. And those decisions sometimes do make some, they do not help in many occasions, because by opening many borders in many occasions, it will weaken many of the working now. And do they really want to do that? That's another issue which we have to take. It's like...
Maybe you don't.
Maybe, who knows? You know.
Okay.
If you're the biggest port in Europe, why would you like to have more ports?
Competition we were talking about. Before I get onto you, can I just... you need the microphone, of course. You take the green one. That's 108.
Only two things. IATA will launch in USA and Canada a program named Nexus, when you can apply. They have an investigation in both countries on you yourself. And when you're accepted, you have special line at the airport, at the borders with trucks, and you go right straight away. And that's worked for the moment. Well, we'll see. But that's really new, but that works very well. Sometimes I heard some airports line were closed, but that's working very, very well. I expect in some days that will be worldwide. But if I hear my friend, Minister of National Safety, of Public Security, probably I will hear other things when we speak about easier at the borders, but that's part of. And about red tape, in our government, we decided to launch a new bill. When we want to have a new bill, a new regulation, we have to scrap one.
Oh, yes, right, yeah.
We're working on that now. That's
Yeah.
not still solved, but it's the way we want to manage. We think we have a lot of regulations to have easier for population, for passengers, and for businesses. When we have a new bill, we will have to scrap one. We're working that, I think, till the end of the year that will be done. Thank you very much.
Great idea, reducing bureaucracy. Your question, sir.
I'm Jean-François Harvis. I'm a colleague of Andreas Kopp at the World Bank.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing is for those interested by this topic, apparently in the room, on May 16, we'll have the next edition to the 2012 of the Logistics Performance Indicator Connecting to Compete. There will be a large overview of all those topics. Mm-hmm. We discuss it a little bit in another session in the morning. An observation I want to make that is, I think sometimes there's a confusion between the economic border and the physical border. And actually, the sickness of the border described by Andreas is not caused by things happening at the physical, just at the physical border. And when you look at the cause of the sickness, I mean, most of the causes are not. It's not just red tape at the border, but you have issues like Marco was mentioning, market access to have services that can really work internationally. Also, as in the case of the IRU, when you look at the delays for land transport, I mean, most of the delays are happening just to initiate transit, not at the individual borders. Finally, I want to ask a question to Minister Kitchev and also the representative from India. I mean, what you mentioned are actually political economy issues. I mean, you have already a framework, especially in Bulgaria, to implement facilitation, but you have lack of willingness, lack of coordination between a number of people to implement the measures. In the context of Asia, you have lack of trust between countries to open the borders. And how do you see the process to overcome those political economic constraints?
Did you understand? I'm very sorry, but we're all looking critically, not because of what you were saying, but because we're trying to understand what you were saying because of the acoustics. Could you maybe just put that in one question?
The question is that what the minister from Bulgaria was mentioning was essentially political economic constraints. It are not technical issues of using IT, etc. That people are not interested in implementing trade facilitation at some borders. Mm-hmm. In the context of South Asia, you have lack of trust between the countries, and there's not the start of cross-border cooperation to initiate trade facilitation. So it's what we call a political economic constraint. And how do you see the process to change the behaviors in Bulgaria or South Asia?
To this question, I'll answer directly. We don't have problems with trust, and for example, with neighboring Turkey, which is our main trade neighbor, we are meeting every 3 months. And I have to tell you that we did open in the last 3 years, we opened an additional point, and now there is another border crossing point, which will be extended with the new road construction, will be extended for trucks as well. And we're only looking to possibilities how to extend those instead of to reduce those, and there is no way I can say lack of trust. On the other hand, we recently signed an agreement for using the so-called short sea shipping, if you can say this, between two countries, but we will open few maritime lines, sea lines between Turkey and Bulgaria as well, where we will find an alternative to road border crossings. And these are the ports of Samsun, the port of Zonguldak, to the ports of Burgas and Varna. If you go into details, those are in our plans, and that's the only way we see that it's possible to find an alternative to the one main. And there's only not one, we have 4 border crossings with Turkey, and they all work right now, actually, so I wouldn't say that's a problem.
Thank you very much.
May I just have, I think it's a clear explanation to that. And it comes also from the explanations of Mr. Kopp. When you have exchange between developing country and industrialized countries, well, free trade and opening borders are not very attractive. So that's also the failure of the Doha round, because the different levels of development. So it's a natural behavior that you would like to protect what you have, and normally free trade is more in favor of developed countries, of industrialized countries, and not of developing countries. So therefore this is one explanation. Second, when you have a downturn of the economy, well, we see now an increasing number of protectionist measures all over the world. So that's another explanation, I think, that you try not to open your borders too much, because, well, you have the regional trade, you have your farmers, you have your producers, and you would like that they are in a good situation. And that's probably also for international global companies, that's not a problem, that's not an issue, but for SMEs, it is one. And therefore, I think trade facilitation, when you see a need or a win-win situation for both sides, when you have a construction, may be harmonization, may also be that it helps increasing the trade from developing countries and at good prices, then I think you can head towards harmonized systems.
Thank you very much. KL, may I just ask you to wait one person's answers, and then it's your turn. Is that okay? The person I would like to bring in is the Lithuanian Vice Minister for Transport, Rimvydas Vastakas. I hope I've pronounced it correctly, who's been with us now throughout the whole discussion. Yeah. I lost you in between, sorry. Otherwise I would have addressed you earlier. What we've just been hearing, is that actually sort of ringing a bell with you, especially sort of hearing that Russia today decreed that it's only going to have one border crossing open?
Yeah, I just want to share some experience with how to manage problems. And well, Lithuania is in a position which is really sensitive.
Why don't you join us, and then our sound engineer also sees which microphone. Thank you very much, Andreas. That's very kind. And I know it's also self-serving, but that's another issue.
Sorry. The situation is really sensitive for us as a country, well, because Lithuania, well, more than 12%, around 14% of GDP comes from transport. Mm-hmm. And we have borders with Belarus and Russia. And our drivers or transport companies, they call not a thick, but sick border. And in this case, if it hurts, you have to look for a decision, for a solution. And we started to do this. And just I want to share with 2 examples how we solve this. The main point is to have good relations and to motivate other country to be friendly and open for cooperation. And we following exactly all procedures which are border crossing procedures or customs procedures, because we are on a border between European Union and Belarus, or European Union and Russia. We found out that the main problem, which was already mentioned, there's a time which is lost before you waiting the crossing the border. Because there are the peaks, for example, in Lithuania or Latvia border with Russia, when you have to wait for more than a week, and there are 600 or 1,000 vehicles staying on the border. Then it comes to the cost of the country to, how to say, to fill with food, toilets, everything, to take care about this 10, 12, 15 or 20 kilometers lines which are near to the border. And we started to look for the solution because it hurts us very much. And we found a few of them. One is railway. We started to work and implement it, and now we have 2 of them, and implementing the 3rd one, the shuttle trains. It's one example. We call it Viking, shuttle train from Lithuania, from Klaipėda seaport going to Ukraine. Procedures on the border for all the wagons, 60 wagons, for example, or containers, takes about 30 minutes. And it goes about 1,800 kilometers, crossing 6 borders in 55 hours. Another example is when we, how to say, invited to negotiations other countries, China, Kazakhstan, Russia. We opened the container train between China and Europe through Klaipėda, through Lithuania. And this train comes in 10 days from China to Europe. Instead of going around the world by vessel, 40 days. And now it's opening, we are going to open the next one, Mercurius, Mercury, which has to go from Russia to Russia, because there are 2 parts of Russia from both sides of Lithuania. And this is very interesting also for Russian colleagues. And I hope that this will be successful for us, because they also wish to shorten times on the border. And the next, which is most, so to say, more problems give us, is the trucks. And the trucks, which are on the border, stays quite long. We decided last year, and now it's on implementation. I hope this year will start to work, but Estonians implemented first. This is information system, or electronic border crossing management system, which you can save all the time before you have to come. You do not need to stay in a line. You just come 5 minutes before you have to be on a border. And for example, border on custom clearance takes 20 hours or 12 hours or 4 hours. It's just the time it takes to you to stay on the border, not more. And this system in Estonia works already almost a year. It's very successful, and we are going to implement this year on our border crossing with Russia and Belarus. And in this case, I think we will save this biggest part of 40% of the time which transport companies are losing on the borders. These are just 2 examples sharing with you. Thank you very much.
Why don't you stay with us, because we're going to sort of enter the last round here. So ladies and gentlemen, yes, we're coming to a close. Thank you very much for that contribution. And we're thinking of Andreas Kopp, who had to catch his flight. So he has not disappeared just because he wanted to, but because he had to. Very last round, and I know that you can all do it, a 2-sentence answer. If we meet again in 3 years' time, which of the border crossing issues have been solved that have not been solved now? And not wishful thinking, but you say, Pere, everything has just to be implemented. What will be implemented in 3 years' time?
Thank you. Yeah? Okay. Thank you for the question, because this is very special. I think in 3 years' time, for example, the TIR convention with the TIR EPD, electronic pre-declaration note, is implemented in some border crossing, and this is very fast to cross, and this is implemented by both countries or several countries. Now is starting also that in several countries in Africa, and of course also Russia at this moment, without the problem that we had today in this case. But for example, the implementation of TIR EPD pre-declaration, this is very fast and safe, and we don't have any problem at this moment.
Thank you very much. That was a touch more than 2 sentences, but I think we can work on that. What tummy ache won't you have in 3 years' time, Denis, as far as border crossing issues are concerned?
We will our agreement with the USA will be completely, I think, implemented. Oh yeah, we are on, and we have most part of many things done, but in 2 years that will be done. And I can say that, like Minister of Infrastructure, I have the mandate of my Prime Minister to build a new plan for infrastructure for the country. We launched a plan some years ago of $33 billion invested in our country. I have the mandate to build a new one that will be in place in 3 years from now, and we will continue to invest in airports, to have better business with our partners from Asia, Europe, and all across the world.
Thank you so much. Gao Zhang, you will probably still have your job, but which problems won't you have in 3 years' time?
So I think with the instruments and the tools and programs implemented, I think So in 3 years' time, the borders from the customs perspective will begin to disappearing, will begin to be disappearing. So there will be one virtual customs worldwide. So finally, when this properly realized, then there will be no physical borders for customs.
It sounds more like a wish,
Yes.
but we accept that as future reality.
For example, I can tell you because now we have many programs. For example, globally net connected customs. That means the information intelligence exchanged very frequently to any parts of the world. So when they go, just go. They pass the borders, just like in Europe, no borders, because we received all advanced information and everything is done. When he comes, go.
Thank you for your optimism.
I can also give you an example.
No, no more examples. You can give that to us later in Carmen. What problems won't you have in 3 years' time, as far as crossing borders is concerned?
In Bulgaria alone, we're going to have the new line and the new highway, which will be open next year. By the end of the year, we'll have the two finished line between Bulgaria and Turkey, which goes through Bulgaria all the way to Eastern Europe, to Western Europe. And I have to say that as optimistically as it sounds, I would like to have this no customs. Really, I would like to support that.
Okay, Gao Zhang for president. Doris, the Gotthard railway tunnel will be finished in 3 years' time? Sorry, I'm not...
I'm sorry, it will be in end of 2016.
All right. Still, in 3 years' time, what will you have achieved? Where is your big hook on? Where do you say this is going to be a success?
Well, I think custom services have a variety of different functions. So from controls for vet control, agriculture products. So I don't see a chance that you you can harmonize all that. But I think what definitely will help is common standards. I think in Europe we will head towards interoperability, so technical standards, and IT will be part of the solution, that we have electronic data transmission for the transportation of goods. I think this can be done, although we will have all over the world different systems. We will see, I think, in Asia and also in South America and Africa, custom unions coming up, because this is also very helpful as first step to beginning a harmonization and beginning a cooperation, perhaps like it was mentioned by our Indian colleague.
And he's the last one to talk in this round. KL, you have watched so many years go past. Yeah. What do you expect for the next 3 years to be actually done?
I expect a change in the mindset and a political will to come about, which will make the world much happier, much more integrated than what it is now. With this hope, I only thank all my colleagues and the beautiful lady over here. Thanks.
That was almost a philosophical end to a hopefully very inspiring panel. Thank you very much, dear panelists, for having been here. Thank you very much for coming up and joining our podium. And ladies and gentlemen, we wish you a great evening here in Leipzig. I know that you all have great invitations, so enjoy. And I know tomorrow morning is a new panel session starting at 10:30, 11:30. 9:15, all right, some of you have to get up earlier. We see each other at 10:15.